The Chiefs just signed a plethora of UDFAs, inviting even more to their mini camp, but there is a couple guys that stand out, including one running back that is built like a linebacker or a fullback, could play a hybrid role in the NFL, and he has an opportunity to fight for a roster spot on the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's talk about him and much more. But first, how about those? All right, we're going to go over all of these UDFA signings, definitely some intriguing ones to talk about on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. First up is USC's defensive back Christian Roland-Wallace. He was a one-year starter at USC, running a 4.61 40, and is 22 years old. He showcased clean footwork in his movements, is quick to read the run, uses his long arms to break up passes, which helped translate to 11 PBUs that led the team, and snatched up 2 INTs out of the air as well. He played mostly outside in college and lacks the experience to immediately kick inside at the NFL level. And some see him as a rotational backup that should be solid on special teams, considering he played 536 career special team snaps. He's also a durable player, not missing a single game in his 5 seasons, playing 53 consecutive, which is pretty impressive, but I will say his 5.01 relative athletic score is a little less impressive. Next up is TCU running back Emani Bailey. He's an intriguing guy because he's a teammate to the Chiefs' 4th-round draft pick and tight end Jared Wiley, but also because he amassed over 1,200 rushing yards and 8 scores in 2023 with TCU. On top of that, he caught all 25 passes that were thrown his way for 184 yards, averaging 7.4 yards per reception. So he seems capable of being a dual-threat back, which is a must in the Chiefs' offense. Now, his RAS is a 1.56, and that is not a typo, so that's not great, not the most athletic type of guy, but some say his on-field movement and explosiveness differs from his raw testing, which is part of how he was able to rack up like 1,400 yards from scrimmage last year. Dane Brugler said he isn't threatening on downhill runs and needs to become a more diverse receiver and pass blocker to earn the trust of NFL coaches on passing downs. Now, if the Chiefs don't re-sign McKinnon this offseason, a solid pass blocking running back is pretty crucial, so we will see if this is Emani Bailey, or obviously if they opt for somebody already on the roster like Deneric Prince or LaMichael Pirine. Next up is an intriguing running back, some even list as a fullback, and the Chiefs had no fullback last year, so if they did sign this man, maybe he could play a hybrid role of running back / fullback, but he definitely played running back in college. He's just built like a freaking tank and kind of looks like an athletic fullback out there on the field, running people over with ease. He also has a pet alligator that's nearly 6 foot long and 90 pounds, so that counts as bonus points in my book and should at least give him extra reps in preseason. He's also been pretty productive in his college career. I mean, this man ran for 891 yards and 6 scores at Ball State in 2021, then ran for over 1,500 yards in 2022. Good God almighty. He had over 150 yards receiving both of those seasons as well, and then ended up transferring to UCLA in 2023. In that season, he still ran for 847 yards and 6 touchdowns, also catching 17 passes for 163 yards and 2 scores. Then he boasts a relative athletic score of 8.90, and this man literally likes to truck people for fun on the football field. And again, he's built like a linebacker, so he will be an interesting one to watch out for in OTAs, training camp, and preseason. He may not be the fastest, but he will for sure fight to earn every yard, which I really do love to see. Next up is Penn State linebacker Curtis Jacobs. According to Eric Galko, who's the director of football operations and player personnel with the Shrine Bowl, Curtis Jacobs was one of the most surprising UDFAs and one of the highest upside linebackers in the draft. His relative athletic score of 8.47 is pretty nice, and in 2023, he racked up 49 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks. He started over 36 games in his college career, and his athleticism translates to quick downhill bursts that shut down running backs. He also played 337 special team snaps, so he's got experience there. If the Chiefs see enough in him to add him to the roster as like a linebacker 5 or something, with a main emphasis on teams to begin his NFL career. All right, the next guy is a 6'3", 316-pound defensive tackle out of Florida State, and that is Fabian Lovett senior. He's a bit older at 24 years of age, didn't score exceptionally high on the RAS, and can be a bit late to react initially off the jump of a snap. However, he's got strong, large hands, can bully off the line by using the power of his upper body, and is a pretty good run stopper, not missing a single one of his 22 tackles in 2023. So he could end up finding his way onto the team as a rotational interior guy, depending on how he does at camp and in preseason. Then there's offensive tackle Nick Torres. He's a 6'6", 315-pound beast out of Villanova who started games at both right tackle and right guard. And unfortunately, he's really the only guy I was able to find very little info about online, but he's definitely excited for the opportunity, and I wish him the best in his chapter, however long it lasts, with the Chiefs. Rehkow is up next. I hope I said that right, but he is a punter out of BYU and had the second highest grade on Dane Brugler's draft boards. He's 6'4", 235 pounds, and averaged 48.4 yards per punt in 2023. On top of that, 43% of his career punts have landed inside the 20-yard line, which is pretty good and will, of course, give Matt, the punt god Ariza, some competition, as they also signed him earlier in free agency. Now, the biggest question I have for both of these guys is, who is the better placeholder? That's what may matter most in the end, as Butker needs the best placeholder possible. Tommy Townsend was absolutely incredible last year, and the Chiefs are a team with some of the least punts in the NFL over the last 5 years. Then you have Utah cornerback Miles Battle, who has a freaking dope last name, and if he makes the roster, I'm getting a jersey. Anyway, he was a standout receiver in high school, but switched to cornerback at Ole Miss before transferring to Utah in 2023. From there, he had 32 tackles, 4 PBUs, and 1 interception, but only started 2 of their 13 games. What I do love to see about him, though, is his RAS is 9.50, which ranks him 125th out of 2,473 corners from 1987 to 2024, and that means the Chiefs are taking yet another chance on another athletic corner. He's a strong tackler, but still a raw developmental type that could be worth the gamble down the road. Then there's defensive end Jaylon White-McClain out of Old Dominion University, who is listed as a defensive end on his school's website, but is said to have played 11 games at defensive tackle, recording 15 tackles and half a tackle for loss. But I would assume that's a typo and they meant defensive end, because at 6'4" and just 254 pounds, I don't really know how often they would be kicking him inside. The next man on this list is Charlotte's edge Eyabi Okie-Anoma. He played at several colleges in his career due to being dismissed from a couple of them for violating team rules. So, on the outside looking in, there are at least some character concerns associated with him. However, he did rack up 56 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, and a forced fumble in Charlotte during his 2023 season, which is pretty impressive. And that was enough to lead the team in both sacks and tackles for loss, despite him missing 2 games during the season. He's a 6'4", 260-pound explosive athlete that's a solid pass rusher, but inconsistent as a run defender. He's still a raw guy that needs developed, but he could find himself to be a rotational pass rusher in the NFL if all goes well for him. And for what it's worth, the Chiefs do have defensive line coach Joe Cullen, who can pretty much make the most out of anybody. Next up is offensive lineman Ethan Driskell, I think is how you say his name, out of Marshall. He's a 6'8", 313-pound lineman and had a 5th to 6th round grade on him by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He started every game the last 2 years at left tackle, so hey, some left tackle experience, keep an eye on him, and he showed improvement every year. He's a guy that, with development, could become a swing tackle in the NFL to start, and with his strength, quick movement, and big-bodied frame, could maybe work himself into a more permanent position down the road, though it's going to take some work. Then there's Oklahoma's offensive lineman McCade Mettauer. Butchered it, but there we are. He's a 6'3", 307-pound team captain who played in all 13 games last season with 12 starts at right guard. He didn't allow a single sack, by the way, all season long, which was 464 pass blocking plays, and also allowed 0 sacks in 2022, and is at least a guy looking at for some interior O-line depth. And then we have ourselves a wide receiver / return specialist out of KSU in Phillip Brooks. He's a rather small guy, 5'6", 5'7", and 175 pounds, but ran a 4.540 and started all 12 regular season games for the Wildcats. And in those 12 games, he recorded 53 receptions for 580 yards and 5 scores, as well as returned 15 punts for 73 yards and 7 kickoffs for 125 yards. It's also worth noting he caught over 500 yards the last 3 seasons at KSU, so he has shown himself productive in spite of his smaller-bodied frame. The next guy up is wide receiver Reggie Brown out of James Madison University. The 6'1", 200-pound wideout amassed over 1,000 yards and 9 scores in 2023, and while his RAS is only a 2.78, the lack of quote-unquote speed in his testing seems to be different when it comes to game speed because this was a deep ball guy for the team, and he averaged over 19 yards per catch last year. So, yeah, he's someone to keep eyes on this offseason, but he's got a lot of competition in that room this year, and it's going to be an uphill battle. Next up is a tight end out of Texas Tech, Baylor Cup. He was a 6'6", 260-pound senior who caught 11 passes for 114 yards and 2 scores. Not a lot there, but he was praised by the coaching staff for his run blocking ability especially. So maybe the path for Baylor Cup is as a blocking tight end similar to Blake Bell, but with the addition of Irv Smith Jr. in free agency as well as Jared Wiley in the 4th round of the draft, it's going to be tough sledding to make the 53. So maybe he's a practice squad guy, slow cooking there for a bit. On top of that, we have a bunch of camp invites. I'm not going to talk a bunch about these guys, but I will at least list them off so you can see who all is there. If any one in particular catches your eye and you're like, hey, this could be a real hit as far as a camp invite goes, let me know. We could dig into their profile a little bit more in depth. But so far, camp invites are as follows. QB Spencer Sanders out of Ole Miss, running back Trey Potts out of Penn State, running back TD good luck out of Villanova, wide receiver Jaron Hayek out of Villanova. Then there's wide receiver Zach Mathis out of North Dakota State, linebacker Bryce Gallagher, Northwestern, linebacker Bryce Houston, Ohio, defensive end Deshaun McCarthy, ESU, defensive end Mario Kendricks out of Virginia Tech, safety Sam Lockett, Washington State, and kicker Noah Rauschenberg out of North Texas. So plenty of players to look at, lots of skilled position players, running backs, wide receivers, then of course a bunch of linebackers since the Chiefs didn't draft a linebacker. You guys got to let me know your thoughts on all these guys in the comments down below. Does Carson Steele stand out to you like he does to me, or maybe one of the other skilled position players? I do like the linebacker that they signed, linebacker Curtis Jacobs. He will be an intriguing one to watch as well. So there's my guys. Let me know yours in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?